Consuming Urban Poverty is the new African Centre for Cities project focusing on poverty alleviation through the governance of urban food spaces. The project is funded by the ESRC and DFID from the UK. The basis of the project is really using food as a lens to understand and alleviate poverty in secondary cities in Africa. So we're focusing on 3 cities, focusing on Kisumu in Kenya, Kitwe in Zambia, and Epworth in Zimbabwe, which is just outside of Harare. And all of these are existing partners that the ACC has through previous projects. So we're building on local existing partnerships. And we think this is a really important project because it helps us understand the experiences and the characteristics and drivers of poverty in secondary cities in Africa, which has largely been neglected.
Caroline Steele articulated in her work, The Hungry City, said that the way to understand cities is to look at it through food. And part of the Consuming Urban Poverty project is to then take that phrasing and to try and understand what happens within these secondary cities. Often all cities are referred to in the same way, and the work that is done in the primary cities often is then translated to secondary cities, and we want to challenge and test these assumptions. We will map out the food retail spaces and try to understand what is taking place, how the customers engage with these particular retail options, and then go into detail with certain retailers to try and really engage with them on what is taking place, how they respond to customers' needs, their networks, how they then provide food.
Internationally, there's an upsurge of interest in urban food policies and urban food governance processes, but that hasn't really happened much within the African context. What are the existing policies and processes that shape the food system? And sometimes those are not directly connected to food, so it might be around urban planning, it might be around sanitation, all of those things impact the food system. So we're going to be trying to understand the process of governance, formal and informal, that affect the food system. So the third work package will have a current and historical focus, so tracing back through history how the food system has been governed in the African cities, and then focusing at the present and looking at the policy environment, but also the practices around policy, and who else shapes the food system in the cities. And part of what we're doing is looking at examples from around the world and trying to understand how and why they work. We don't want to simply transfer policies and practices. We need to understand how they relate to the local context. So it's about building the work of work package 1, 2, 3, and then combining that with this understanding from elsewhere to generate local viable work policies and strategies. So ultimately the project aims not just to have academic outputs, although those are critical to what we're doing, but also to have this policy and strategy outcome. And so we'll be working with local government, but also with local civil society organisations, the NGO sector, trader associations, all these organisations that can help shape that governance of the food system. And ultimately, again, to feed our findings back to larger organisations such as the World Bank, such as the various UN agencies that impact the food system.